Hello, beautiful ladies, and welcome to today's video where we're going to be talking about how to date as a conservative woman. So I've got my notebook out here in front of me. I took a bunch of notes because I think that dating as a conservative woman is a little bit of a different experience than what most people are doing in 2020. And so I thought we would just sit down, have a girl chat, talk about how conservative women should be dating and kind of my dating experience and how these things came into play and just how important it is to actually date with purpose. So let's get started. So dating is hard, right? Like we can all agree, dating is not the easiest thing in the world. Sometimes it's fun, but a lot of the time it kind of sucks. One of the things that I learned early on when I was dating was to start compiling a list. Now, I want to be clear, there's kind of two different lists in the world of dating, and one of those lists ends up getting thrown out the window when you meet the right guy, and that's kind of about height, or what he's gonna do as a career, or things that you think are important but aren't important. But then there are those things that really are important and you learn while you're dating other people. So when I was dating, for example, I would date guys, and after we broke up, I would kind of sit down and think, okay, there were certain things in that relationship that were missing, or there were certain things in that relationship that I really loved about that guy. So what do I want in a future guy that he had, and what would I never want again? So for example, one thing that I learned early on in my dating career was I didn't want to date a guy, I didn't want to end up with a guy who felt like he had to win every argument. There are some guys who really just think that they need to be the smartest one in the room all the time, and you can never get into just a discussion, everything turns into a debate. So I knew very quickly that I never wanted to end up with a guy like that. And so with Jacob, when I met him, I loved that we could have conversations and the two of us could come to an agreement at the end, and it wasn't trying to one-up each other. I just hated that. So that was a good lesson for me that I picked up while I was dating. Now there's a lot of different examples of things like that. Leave a comment down below of something that you've picked up while you were dating that's kind of like that. Something where it's like, I know that this is not gonna work for me in a relationship, and I picked it up because I dated somebody who had that. Or the opposite, something that you dated a guy and he had this quality and it was fantastic and you want that for the guy you end up with. I think that that's kind of a wonderful benefit to dating a few people before meeting the right person, is you actually kind of have a roadmap about who you want to be with. Now, again, I'm just gonna reiterate that there are those lists that mean absolutely nothing, okay? Like having an idea of how much he needs to make as a salary, or what kind of clothing he needs to wear, or whatever that is, something that's kind of superficial. You can have a list about that, but when you meet the right guy, that may end up going out the window. So it's more about values and compatibility at the end of the day. And speaking of values, let's talk about only dating guys who share your values. Now, what does values mean? How do you find a guy who shares your values? Well, there are a couple of different ways that you can figure that out. One is kind of by knowing if they share your politics. A lot of the time, politics really do align with your values. I'm not gonna say 100% of the time. I know that there are couples where one is conservative, one is liberal, whatever that is, but I think most of the time dating someone who shares your political viewpoint is going to make a really big difference, because politics do align with values. It just ends up happening that way most of the time. So finding a guy who really shares your political viewpoint a lot of the time will also mean he shares your values, and that's great. That's gonna be a wonderful thing moving forward in your relationship, in your marriage, in your parenting. Those things are really important. Another way to kind of guarantee that the guy you end up with shares your values is if he shares your religion. Now, I believe you should try and marry within your religion, because I think it's just going to make your life easier, and you will share values early on, and that will translate in your parenting, which is really where religion becomes super important. So for me, when I met my husband, it was really important that I marry a Jew. And the fact that the two of us agreed on what religion we want to raise our children and kind of the standards we want to raise our children with, that was incredibly important. Dating as a conservative is about dating long term. You want to find a match that's going to end in marriage. Let's just be frank about it. You don't want to be dating a guy for 10 years and then not end up getting married, at least in my opinion. So if that's the case, you have to look at the things that are going to make that relationship last. And values, compatibility, those kinds of things don't go away, and they actually get bigger as time goes on. So if you're dating guys who don't share your values and you're not really compatible with, those are the relationships that kind of end horribly, because a lot of the time those relationships start with this really intense chemistry. I have a whole blog post on this. I will link that below because I have really strong opinions about chemistry and compatibility. But dating the right person is about feeling that sense of calm, not that really intense worry and anxiety that things are going to end any moment. You feel calm because you have a passion, but you also don't think that everything is going to implode once you ask the major questions, because the major questions have been agreed upon early on. So that was a little bit of a rant, but I do feel strongly that if you're a conservative and you want to end up getting married, having a family, these are the things you need to be paying attention to. And then on a totally different note, this is something I feel pretty strongly about, and that's leading boys on. Don't do it. As a conservative woman, you are an ethical person, and you don't want to be the kind of girl who treats men poorly and leads them on and hurts their feelings. So an example of this is, I know that I made this mistake when I was in college. There was a guy who really liked me, and we stayed friends because I was clear with him. I said, I'm not interested in you, but we can still hang out. That was a really big mistake because his feelings only grew for me and mine really didn't change. And I was leading him on by hanging out with him when I knew that there was no future there and he was always hoping that something more would develop. If a guy tells you that he's interested and you don't have any interest in him, but you think that you've made everything clear to him because you told him, hey, I'm not interested, that doesn't mean that you should then be able to hang out with him alone as friends. He's always going to harbor a little bit of hope that that could change and become more of a relationship and not just a friendship. And that's a really hard thing on guys. So I really don't recommend being the kind of woman who says, hey, I was upfront from the beginning, and so I'm not going to take responsibility if his feelings grow for me. The fact is, that's kind of the female equivalent of a man telling a woman that he doesn't have feelings for her, but they can continue to hook up, and it's never going to develop into anything more than just a friends with benefits situation. Yeah, he was clear with her, that is true, but a lot of the time she's gonna harbor hope that this friends with benefits situation is going to develop into something more. And we all know that you can't really do a friends with benefits situation without it turning into more, someone wanting more on either side. So as a woman, if you're the one who's saying, well, I was upfront and I told him I'm never gonna be interested, but we can hang out as friends, he's gonna be the one harboring hope that the relationship could grow. And so you kind of have like the male version and the female version, and you don't really want to do either. Neither one is a good thing. So as a conservative woman, take that guy's feelings into account. Don't lead him on. You don't need that friendship that much, and he doesn't need to be hooked on you when he really could be dating other people. It's definitely a funny thing I've noticed that a lot of empowerment and stuff about women's self-help in 2020 is all about like, be you, be strong. And that's great, but one of the things that's really ignored is that when you do have that strength and that power, and we as women are so influential to our world, you also have to take into account other people, and you have to learn how to be the best version of yourself and the sweetest person that you can be, in the sense of not hurting people's feelings. You do have an immense power over a man, depending on the situation, and we should be learning how to be good members of society, not just strong women. Now, this piece of advice is kind of on a different note, and that is don't hang around guys that you're attracted to, but can't actually end up with. So here's this philosophy that I have. You can't choose who you love, but you can choose who you don't love. Let me explain what that means. You can't choose who you love means you can't pick a guy out of a lineup and say, I'm gonna have feelings for him. It doesn't really work like that, unfortunately. A lot of the time, you have to have that kind of spark before anything else can grow. But you can choose who you don't love. So what does that mean? That means that if you are starting to feel that chemistry with someone who is not right for you, you can remove yourself from the situation. And it is so important that you do so. Chemistry relationships, the relationships that are built on chemistry but really have no compatibility, those happen really frequently. People can have personalities that just hit it off and like really make a fire, but then don't have any future because you don't agree on anything. And those relationships are really intense and end horribly. And those are the relationships that are dangerous in the sense of if you hang out with that guy too much, you can tell yourself that nothing's going to develop, but something will. And if it does, it's not going to end well if you're a conservative woman who has certain values that you want to live your life by. So if you meet a guy, for example, and you guys are just totally attracted to each other, but you also realize that maybe he doesn't want kids, or maybe he thinks that abortion is okay and you're really not okay with it, you might end up having a really intense connection with him. And if you keep hanging out with him, something is going to happen. Over time, things are going to happen. It just works that way. No one has as much self-will as they think that they do. And so in that situation, it's your responsibility to say, I'm not going to go to events where he's at. I'm not going to hang out with him alone. I'm not going to put myself in a situation where I'm only inevitably going to get hurt. And that is so important. So I'm going to reiterate, you can't choose who you love, but you can choose who you don't love. So you can make a clear-headed decision about somebody who you have that really intense chemistry with, but you're not going to have a future with. So the next one is pretty obvious, but I'm going to say it anyway. Be clear with your physical intentions before you start dating someone. I am a proponent of waiting until marriage to have sex. I think it's really important to do that. And I actually think as a conservative woman, it's something to keep in mind. Now, I know a lot of women are gonna disagree with me on that. Leave it in the comments below. Maybe we can get into some discussions. I'd love to have a conversation about it. But the fact of the matter is that waiting until marriage is gonna be better for you. It's gonna be better for your relationships. It's going to keep you directed toward marriage and not toward a long-term relationship that doesn't really have an end point. It's just a really big distraction, and it will get in the way of you actually finding somebody who does have that chemistry and compatibility, and it'll make relationships last longer that shouldn't have lasted at all. You'll also be able to weed out the guys who are willing to wait, and that is a fantastic thing. It means that they're taking marriage as seriously as you are, and that is super important. So my last piece of advice is to put effort into your looks before dates. Now, I think there are kind of like two sides of the spectrum on this argument, and then there's the middle. There's the side that says, hey, I shouldn't have to put an effort into my looks. If he thinks that my personality is great, then he's not gonna care what I look like. And then there are the women who say, I wanna dress however I want. I wanna be able to look very, very sexy, and I want him to still look past that and find my personality. And here's the reality of the situation. Men are visual creatures. That goes both ways. If you decide to not put in any effort into your looks, it's going to be hard to get his attention at all. He might overlook you, and then he's not even gonna have an opportunity to get to know your personality. On the other side of the spectrum, if you dress sexually first, then he's going to have to overcome looking at your body to get to know your personality because he's so distracted by just what's in front of him. The best thing, the middle ground, is to look attractive without looking like you're ready for a one-night stand. Dressing nicely and beautifully, putting on a little bit of makeup, doing your hair, getting him to notice you without him immediately imagining you in a bedroom scenario will also give him the opportunity to get to know your personality. So I think it's super important to put an effort into your looks. I think that dressing up as a woman is like the best thing ever. If you know me at all, you know that I love getting dressed up. I love putting on makeup. I love doing my hair. I think those things are the best parts of being a woman, or at least some of the best parts. And not giving him an opportunity to notice you at all by just saying, I'm not gonna have to try. He should just like me for my personality is not realistic. He needs to be attracted to you before getting to know your personality, and it can't be so attracted to you where it's just about your body, but it can't be nothing at all. And that middle ground of being beautiful and really trying to be attractive is going to do wonders for your dating life. So putting on a little bit of makeup, just kind of accentuating your features, wearing a nice outfit that really just makes you look attractive. These are things you're gonna see a really good result when you're dating, and will make it easier for a guy to come over and notice you and get to know your personality. So huge proponent of that. Feel free to watch any of my tutorials on modest dressing or makeup tutorials. Those are kind of good places to start. Let me know in the comments below, what are your recommendations for how to date as a conservative woman? I'd love to hear them. I'd love to hear what dating is like in your experience. And let me know in the comments if you guys are interested in having a series of girl chats where we can kind of talk and chat like this. I really enjoy doing this, sharing ideas and getting your guys' thoughts too. That's really fun. So please feel free to leave comments down below. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video. Please subscribe to my channel and blog if you haven't already. Head over to my Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook and follow me there. Hit that notification bell to get notified of all my new videos. Please head over to classicallyabby.locals.com if you want to support my channel, see more of my content, and join our community. And I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!